I grew up on a farm in West Cumberland. The farm was about 1.5 miles from the nearest town of Egremont. When I was a teenager, a young teenager, yes, I wanted to work in a bank. Working in a bank in those days was considered to be a very prestigious position. But it never materialized, because when I was 17 and I applied, I left school. My father wanted me to work on the farm. I did not want to work on the farm. I went to see the local manager, and he said he would have liked to have employed me, but it would take about 12 months to really train a person, and by then I would have been called up into the forces. The war was on. So the banks were then employing only women. Well, the war started in 1939 when I was 14. And when a year later, when I was 15, I joined the Air Training Corps, because all teenagers and all adults who were working in agriculture or any of the protected industries, that's the essential industries for the war, like coal mining, for example, and iron ore mining, were encouraged, in fact directed, to join one of the civil defense organizations. And the main one was the Home Guard, and my two brothers joined the Home Guard. I did not want to join the Home Guard. I was only interested in flying, and therefore I joined the Air Training Corps, the ATC, which I joined in 1940. In the Air Training Corps, I suppose you were always learning something, because we were young. I was only 15 when I joined the Air Training Corps. By 16 I had taken my first flight, because we always spent 2 or 3 weeks at one of the RAF stations in the area. They were all the RAF personnel there were on training, and therefore all the aircraft that were being used for training purposes, not for other military purposes. So I suppose really it took me one summer. That's about 2 or 3 weeks, and I knew enough to know about the ATC. I joined up on my 18th birthday, and I was required, I remember going to my job with working in an iron and steel company that very morning at 7:30, preparing all the work that I normally would have been doing that day until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Then I took the bus and I went to Carlisle, bus and train to Carlisle, where I had to report at 11 o'clock. In reporting in Carlisle, following the instructions on my calling up papers, I was immediately told to take the next train, and I was given a voucher for the train to go to Edinburgh for interview. When I got to Edinburgh, I had to report to a place on Church Street, so I had to report there, they gave me a brief interview and said that I would be given a full test the following day. So the following morning I had to go back from Lothian Road to, and I went by tram, back to Church Street to take my exam or test. And they asked me what did I want to be. I had wanted to be a pilot, but I couldn't be accepted because I didn't have perfect sight in both eyes, and in those days you had to have 6/6 sight in each eye. So they told me I couldn't be a pilot, so I said, well, I will be a wireless operator. And after the trade test board, they told me I'd be wasting my time as a wireless operator. I should take their advice and go in as a wireless engineer. It took me 12 months to train. First of all, 6 months in the Northern Polytechnic in London, learning the theory of radio engineering. And prior to that, 3 months physical training in Padgate near Warrington, and that is to toughen you up, and everybody had to do that. And lastly, 3 months in Bolton in the Northern Polytechnic, in the Manchester Polytechnic, where I did my practical radio engineering. I had to do that for 3 months before I fully qualified as a radio engineer. Immediately after that, I was given 2 weeks embarkation leave, which meant that I was being sent outside the UK. And when I went to get my overseas kit, that's all the clothing, etc. for overseas, they gave us tropical clothing, which meant that I was going to a tropical climate, and I therefore wasn't going into France, which at that time had been already invaded. The invasion in Normandy had already taken place. That had taken place in June 1944, and I was given my embarkation leave in September 1944. So I was then sent by boat, zigzagging because of the danger of submarines, etc. And I ended up in Mumbai, or Bombay as it was then, and where I stayed for about 4 or 5 days in what they call in transit. Then by train to a place called Belgaum, and taken by lorry from there, Belgaum station, to Sambra, which was about 7 miles away. And I was in Sambra until just after Christmas. No, I wasn't nervous at all. No, the only area where I might have been nervous, and some people were more nervous than others, was in London, because we were bombed most nights during the winter of 1944. Coming home was a little bit strange, because I was out in the Far East for 3 years. And during that 3-year period, I had a fairly wide experience of large transmitters and small transmitters, particularly large transmitters. In Trincomalee in Sri Lanka, Ceylon as it then was, where I was stationed for about 5.5 months, 6 months. The transmitters could be as large as this room. I had the idea after my last period overseas, when I was working for Radio Bangkok for 2 months, where I put in a shortwave transmitter for them, for the European service, and I had to take out with a transmitter in an articulated vehicle. That had to be completely dismantled, moved indoors, reassembled in a different format, and put in a more permanent aerial outside. I was in charge of that, and when I completed the installation, and bearing in mind it was for Radio Bangkok, so I was being watched by the Thai people in Thailand. I was being watched by the Thai engineers to see exactly how it was going to operate, etc. And then I had to put it on test after putting up the aerial, and I had to cut the aerial to size, etc. And I called Bern, because Bern being the capital of Switzerland, Bern was the obvious one to be in contact with, higher up as well and easier to receive. So when I said calling Bern, are you receiving me over? And then I got a reply, this is Bern, calling you, receiving you loud and clear. And there was a big applause. So I convinced myself that what I would do, I would go into radio engineering when I came out.